Now you've all heard me whine about being down in the dumps. It's time to answer the question I know you've all had on your minds. What did I do about it? Well, the first thing I did was tell my parents about it. I've never experienced depression like this before, but I could tell this was it in full force, and it was killing me on the inside. When I told my dad about it, it just so happens he actually knew a counselor I could visit. The counselor's name was Malcolm, and if you're wondering why I'm using his real name instead of a fake name, it's because he's already fairly famous. So I went to him for counseling and... yeah, screw it, let's just call him Dr. Strange. We scheduled an appointment for me to visit him. It was actually really good being able to talk about these problems with someone else. But more importantly, doing so helped me understand them better. I told him about what happened at the Bridgeway, or rather what didn't happen, and that I hadn't fulfilled my main desire, traveling to another country. I also told him that I felt like I'd just been going in circles, and my attempts to break free of those circles had ended in failure. Or as he put it, you feel like a hamster in a wheel. Putting it that way actually did really help me simplify the problem. I think that at the core of everything, I was drowning in a great big ocean of boredom. I know, sounds childish, but it's true. In fact, when I was thinking about it, I decided to look it up on the internet, and sure enough, boredom is one of the leading causes of depression. You know what, yeah, that makes sense. Being driven insane by not having enough happening in your life. If there is anything I've learned from this whole ordeal, it's that sometimes life isn't about what's happening. It can be about what's not happening. So with all that in mind, I was actively trying to get the depression out of my system as quickly as possible. Easier said than done. This is the second big problem with depression. On top of making you feel absolutely miserable, it's also really hard to get rid of. You can't just not stop being depressed, you have to slowly work it out. Let me give you an example of me trying. I actually flew all the way over to Wellington. If I couldn't travel to another country, I could at least travel to another city in my country. It helped, but it was only temporary. I stayed in Wellington for about 10 days, and it was a good 10 days, but when I got back to Auckland, I just got back to feeling miserable again. I did enjoy my time in Wellington, don't get me wrong. It's just that it felt like I was in a different version of Auckland. The only difference was how windy it was. I know, sounds ridiculous, but that's seriously what it was like. Everything just felt like a temporary reprieve to me. I just couldn't escape it. I just couldn't get over what was now an obsession with traveling outside of New Zealand. I had it on my mind 24/7. Travel, 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 travel. I didn't even care which country I went to. I just wanted to go somewhere. Anywhere. But I couldn't. My parents were... actually, they still are in debt and skint on money. And I wasn't earning enough to feel like I could start saving for myself. Do you know what the funny thing is? The reason why I wanted to travel was years prior to all this. I was trying my hand at writing. I wanted to try telling stories, but whenever I thought up an idea, it was always about world travel. I just simply couldn't help it. Stepping through a portal and into another world has always been appealing to me. There was just one problem though. I could never finish the worlds I was writing about. No matter how hard I tried, it just felt like there was something missing. So naturally I thought, what if I took a plane trip to somewhere else in the world? That's kind of like the real life equivalent of stepping through a portal and entering another world. So I waited for the opportunity, and it never happened. In fact, the chances of it happening became lower over time. And now, years later, that motivation of mine has completely changed. I don't just want to travel to gain inspiration for my writing. I want to travel because it feels like I have to now. I need to be honest with myself. New Zealand's just not a good place for me anymore. Now, don't get me wrong, this is a great place to live. In fact, I actually recommend coming over here if you're looking for a place to holiday. But for me, I just feel like I desperately need a break from this place. And I think I was right to feeling that way at the time, because the depression was interfering with my life real badly. At that point, I'd actually become scared and impatient. I did want things to happen, and I had options. It's just that none of those options were making themselves easy for me. I wanted a new job, just a simple little retail job, but all the openings were full. I was thinking of going to a new school, but it didn't seem like a good idea because of the state of mind I was in. And that reminds me, remember that film school I mentioned earlier called SAE Auckland? I've actually been afraid of going there because I just don't think I'm ready for that much responsibility yet. Right now, I just don't think my head and my heart are in the right place. And as for the Bridgeway, I'm actually going to cut ahead a little into my story. As time went on, and as I was getting better, I started to dread going to the Bridgeway. I was still only working there for 1 day a week. 1 day a week, and I was feeling increasingly miserable there. I'd actually stopped making videos for them because I just wasn't enjoying it anymore. Like I said before, the videos were just going nowhere, which definitely relieved some of the stress, but it also created a new problem where my payment got reverted back to normal. The meager payment I was getting when I first started working at the Bridgeway. So eventually, I just quit when I realized that going there was bad for my mental health. It just wasn't worth it anymore. The money I was getting from there wasn't worth it anymore, and the experience of working there had just flat out dried up. I came to the conclusion that I was just better off not being there at all. It was a small step in making me feel better, but it still didn't fix what was at the core of the problem. I was still feeling bored, miserable, frustrated, and I didn't know what to do about it. Now then, you're probably wondering, how does a kooky little kid show help somebody out of depression? I'm getting to that part, be patient.